Hey, everybody. Welcome to another week of Dentistry Unmasked. I'm Pam Maragliano-Muniz. With me, as always,
Hey Pam, David Rice, good to see you.
so great to see you. Now, this week's going to be really interesting because I know my practice kind of underwent a facelift around the pandemic time and certainly no looking back. But I think a lot of us don't have our dream practice. And I feel like as an associate, you can leave. As an owner, I mean, you can leave, but it's a lot harder to leave.
A
And
little bit.
so, sometimes we have to have that, I call it my Jerry Maguire moment or whatever it is, where you hit rock bottom and you need to make a change. But it's not always something we should do alone. And I feel like that's something where we could use some help, especially to achieve the practice of our dreams. And it is possible. We just need to be able to do it. So, I'm so excited to welcome Doctors Martin Mendelson and Don Andersen with us this week.
Well,
Hello.
hello there.
So
Happening,
tell us,
gents.
yeah, let's just kick it off. Don, you kind of can relate to what I was sort of talking about. Would you share
Yes,
a little bit about your practice and kind of what happened with you?
sure. I've been in practice 27 years, and about 2023, as the pandemic restrictions were kind of rolling back, that's when a lot of the interesting team dynamics started happening, where people were starting to re-engage each other, but they almost didn't have the social skills to engage each other properly. And so what they were doing is basically starting to bicker amongst each other. It was, assistant versus assistant, hygienist versus hygienist, front versus back, the whole 9 yards. And it was one of those things where it got so out of hand that I ended up hiring Martin Mendelson to help us with the coaching aspects of it, to make sure that I wasn't missing something, that I was facilitating better communication in the office and giving better psychological safety to the staff and employees. And I also hired a management team in addition to that to help me kind of facilitate the financials as all this was happening. And it was one of those things where just the chemistry was not what it needed to be to facilitate the type of practice I wanted. We were also beginning to start scaling back on insurances, and nothing against insurance, but it wasn't a good opportunity for my practice. So we started to kind of abandon some of those. And as we were doing that, the infighting increased even more. So it wasn't a good, healthy dynamic.
So I have a question on that. Do you feel like the COVID comeback was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and there were maybe like subtle symptoms there over the years, and there was just like it just all happened?
Yeah, I think it was a culmination of all the angst and anxiety that occurred during the pandemic and the social isolation from each other. So it's almost like people kind of lifted the manhole cover and started to look at what was around them, and they weren't liking what was around them for whatever reason, and they were starting to express that to each other, but not doing it in a way that was kind, polite, social. It was more animosity. It was more, just it was all about me.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is interesting because I feel like there's many of us out there that can relate. So if I'm hearing you, they came back and it was like something switched. They were totally different. And maybe if they didn't love each other before, now they hate each other kind of thing. Is that sort of,
It,
the issues sort of escalated. So what do you do? Like at what point are you like, I need help? Like there's got to have been that moment where you're like, that's it. I need to do something here.
Yeah, I mean, it got to the point where it was almost a daily stream of employees coming into my office and complaining about other employees. And at the same time, I'm sitting there busy, feeling like I'm on roller skates, seeing too many patients. And so it was just a bad confluence. And by the time, it hit critical mass, it was 2023, and everybody was at war. And I was basically just trying to calm the storms. And I couldn't do it by myself. I realized I needed help. And so Martin was kind enough to help us out. And a lot of times, I think people assume that they understand what another person's thinking, but the reality is we don't. And during an episode where everybody's high energy, angry at each other, or frustrated with each other, you need some help to be able to communicate to help settle that all down if you can.
So Martin, I have to ask, is this sort of like, so I feel like no matter what it is, I'm always a dentist and I have to dentist the you know what out of every situation. So I'm guessing, did you have to do like a diagnosis and then come up with a plan? I'm imagining part of this plan was maybe changing some team members, or did you do this without changing the team members? Like, how do you, how do you help?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, I'll have Don kind of pick up after I finish commenting on this because he did basically almost the whole team turned over. Um, the truth of the matter is that Don and I started to work together first in a coaching capacity to really kind of understand what his struggles were, how he wanted to lead the practice different, and regardless of whom I'm talking to as Dr. Kyle Stanley says, dentistry is what we do, it's not who we are. And so, one of the things that I've embraced as a dentist, as a coach, as a speaker, is the reality that although we're all unique individuals, we all are motivated by similar factors. We all go through similar things. And so, I developed a framework that I talk about in my book that I use in my coaching and my workshops. And it's an acronym of the word team. And it stands for thoughts lead to emotions that drive actions that manifest results. And it actually all comes from the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and the idea that there's a space between stimulus and response. And so the diagnosis, oftentimes, to answer your question more directly, is what is the stimulus and what is the response? And then through a curious coaching aperture, I look at, okay, so how might individuals be responding based upon stimulus and response? Like, what's the gap between the two? And so the truth of the matter is that I come into a practice and we have a day where we facilitate and open the doors to psychological safety. We have conversations around the idea of team. We have exercises about the concept of team. And one of the things that can be most eye-opening is the creation of an alliance. And it's a literal document. And it has three parts. It's what kind of place do we want to show up to every day? How do we want to show up when there are challenges? And how do we want to keep each other accountable? And so we sat there, we meaning myself, Don, and both teams, if you will, and talked about, okay, when we put our keys in the car every morning, what kind of place do we want to show up to? And so we documented those words and we said, okay, we all know that, what's going to hit the fan on occasion. When that happens, how do we want to show up? And then if somebody is having a bad day, which congrats, we're all human, will have, how do we want to respectfully and with care say, hey, you're not upholding our alliance? And so the concepts and the framework help to create the diagnosis. And one of the treatments in the treatment plan is an alliance, and everybody's alliance is different. That's what's super cool about this, because everybody's practice is different, yet we're all human beings that operate under similar constructs.
I like that. And then I'm assuming as part of that process, you're getting to why it is everybody sort of walks in the door with the belief systems that they have. And
Yeah. Part of my process that I was trained by my coaching mentors, we do this really fun exercise called the Edge. And basically, in all intents and purposes, it's a gap exercise, but it's facilitated through photographs. So I literally lay out, remember this, Don? We had photographs all over the office, these 8.5 by 11 full color glossy photos of all different kinds of things. And we paint a really rosy picture of where we will be in the end. And people pick photographs that represent for them what that looks like, put those up on the wall, and we talk about it. Then we go back and go, okay, well, that's where we want to go, but we're here now. And so let's go back to the photos and pick representations for you about where we are today. And then we discuss, great, so how are we going to bridge the gap between where we are now and where we want to go? And typically, the gap is due to one of three things: skills, resources, or mindset. And I'll give you a little secret, 99% of the time, it's the third one. It's the mindset stuff. It's not the skills, because people are there for a reason. It's not the resources, although sometimes we have to resource differently. It's how we're looking at things. And Don, I don't want to speak for you, but in Don's case, what ended up happening, particularly with the first team, was they started to really see where he was going and realize what the way they were thinking, and many of them just self-selected out. Right? Right, Don?
Yeah. Yeah. It just seemed like as I was kind of focusing more on the new dynamic I wanted to create, they seemed to opt out more because they realized it wasn't something they wanted to be a part of. And rather than engaging each other in an unfavorable manner, they, realized I think that they were taking their own self-interest more than the practice of self-interest at that point. So, it was a eye opener for everybody as Martin was kind of helping them understand that maybe, okay, not everybody thinks the same. What are we going to do about that?
So, Don, I feel like your experience is probably much like many dentists' experience, where you wake up one day and you realize, like, today's the day I would like to start heading in the direction that I would like to go in.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
Yeah. How frightening was it to actually take that first step?
It was both encouraging and emboldening because all of a sudden I realized, I've been doing this a long time. I deserve the practice I deserve, not the practice that my team necessarily wants, but it's not their vision, it's my vision. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I have to put myself first and for the patient's benefit as well. They need somebody to drive the bus. And if I'm not the one driving the bus, who is? So you start asking yourself, it's like, okay, is it time for me to, get the show on the road? And how am I going to do it? And you try and do it as best you possibly can.
Yeah. So to Pam's Jerry Maguire question, what was it, do you think, that flipped that switch for you that you could, with confidence, say, like, I'm ready to do this now? Was it a moment? Was it a series of moments? Was it someone or someones who helped you get there?
I think it was, I started to go more digital technology and I started to get more and more excited about all the things that digital technology could do. I went through the analog era. I was happy with the analog era, but I wish I had had all these tools 20 years earlier to be able to facilitate, like, custom wax ups, things like that. Things that actually make my job easier, allow me to provide better care to my patients, because in the end, we all want what's best for the patient. So it got the interest in, I guess, the energy bubbling up in me to begin to get more into that. And as I was getting more into that, I got more acquainted with, Spear and others, and actually started to learn the process a little bit more about, kind of changing the mindset from single tooth dentistry to, full mouth dentistry. And that was exciting to me because after all these years of doing occlusion and all these things that I've always enjoyed kind of learning about, it finally all coalesced all at the same time. And so it gave me the impetus to say, hey, you know what? I want to have some fun. Let's see what I can do to change this. And so it was a good outcome for it.
And if I may, that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of Don, because he didn't just, to your point, David, he didn't just say, "Oh well, this really stinks. I'm going to keep going." It was so multifaceted, from technology to clinical knowledge to clinical implementation, and through my observation, that was part of the ultimate rollover of the team, because many of the individuals had been with him for years and they were from the analog era. And all of a sudden, here's Dr. Andersen talking about CAD CAM and 3D printing and airway. What are we going to do? Like, I'm not comfortable doing that. And so he kept moving forward to not only improve his clinical skills, but his leadership skills and just the way he wanted to feel every day when he got into his car. And I think it's such a wonderful lesson for people to see and embrace the idea that we do have a choice. We don't have to accept the way our life is today. We can make different steps toward different outcomes, and the only person standing in our way is ourselves.
Hmm.
So I'm imagining you're trying to bring in this technology, and in doing so, you've got team members that are like, no. Or
Yes.
even though you've got a scanner sitting here, they're reaching for impression material. I feel like that's kind of the symptom of I'm not accepting of this. And I mean, that happened to me with digital X-rays. It was the first thing I bought when I bought my practice, And my assistant came up and said, "We need Fixer." And I'm like, "We're not buying another thing of Fixer ever again." So I made it so they could not be analog. But obviously, with impression material, you'll always have it there, just, for when you need it. So it
Right.
would be easy for them to grab it. So in the spirit of not dumping everybody who, treads, who, has a little trepidation with a new skill, what happened? So you tried to bring in this new technology and they were just not willing to accept it. Is that sort of how it worked? And then all of a sudden it created angst amongst themselves?
Yeah, very much so. I brought in the scanner, and I think it was collecting dust for about the first month and a half. They were just very resistant to even looking at it, touching it, even walking past it. They kind of would steer clear of it. And it, to me, it was like, hey, I'm making this big investment to change. I want to improve the practice. And, I'm willing to give you guys all the training in the world that I could possibly find to make, that transition easier. And they were just staying away as much as humanly possible from it. Once they started to actually interact with it a little bit, they, started seeing, okay, this isn't so bad. This is actually kind of fun. But they never got to the point where they were saying, gee, I'm really enjoying the digital era. They still wanted to kind of hold on to that analog era. And unfortunately, they didn't want to grow. And I'm big in continuing education. I'm big in growth. I want to actually expand my knowledge because you never stop learning. And when you stop learning, that's when bad things happen in the world. That's when you end up having, your business die, or, you basically get stuck in the road or, basically a dead end. And you get to the point where taking the ostrich approach in life doesn't really benefit anybody.
I love that.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And I'm imagining, Martin, I'm imagining my old team, and I'm imagining you coming into my office with pictures and them being like, "I'm not doing this," or "This is
Yeah.
stupid," or, rolling their eyes, or,
Mhm.
kind of not wanting to do it. I feel like you can probably sense from a mile away who's not going to stay.
Oh, yes. And the longer I do it, the better my spidey sense gets, to be honest with you. And I think that kind of leads me in my brain to a very interesting point, which is this. Not everybody needs to be there, and we need to be okay with that. And by the same token, we also have to utilize our experiences not to our detriment. And what I mean by that is there's no question that it's a challenge to find great team members today. But that also doesn't mean that nobody wants to work anymore. That's not what it means. What you've experienced is a group of individuals, some of whom don't want to work the way you want to work, and that's okay. But in almost any place that any of us practice, with very few exceptions, there's way more people there than we could ever hire. And so it is a challenge. It is very, very difficult, and it certainly isn't easy. But to keep your mind open to the possibility that yes, there are people out there that are going to work out. I know in Don's case, because we've gotten to know each other so well. When he started rehiring, he actually hired a couple clinical individuals that only lasted a couple weeks. He was okay with that, and then he moved on and found other people. And now, in his words, he has a team that he just absolutely loves. And so, again, here we go, same theme. Who's getting in our way? We are.
Yeah. So Pam, you went through that metamorphosis a few years back, right? And you can speak to that as well.
I can, and I would say I hung on now, not because they're bad people or anything. I mean,
Sure.
liked them enough as people, but I can say I didn't have the confidence. I did not get along with the owner when I bought my practice, so she had to go. Like that had to happen, and then the decor had to change because I had carpets in the op. So I feel like people say don't change anything right away, but I was like owner out, carpets out. Like I feel like I was making changes. So the one thing I felt I should keep constant would be the team. And it's not like me to just be like, all right, I own the place. You're out. You're out. Yeah, you too. Out. Like like that's not my nature. So I really wanted to give them an honest go. And I feel like I sort of had to, like you talk about your book, David, is everybody smiling except you? That was me. Like I was like, I'm just going to sort of go through the motions. And if somebody asks me to lecture in California on a Tuesday, I'm in because now I'm out from like Monday to like Wednesday. Perfect. And that is not a good sign of like a healthy practice or healthy leadership. I just couldn't wait to not be there. Um, so for me, I can say it was a confidence thing. I thought, oh my gosh, if I dump everybody that's, my assistant that's been in the practice for 32 years, are the patients going to think I'm this evil troll, and, are they going to be like, what did you do with her? And, maybe leave. But it was actually quite amazing. And I feel like I wish I could convey this to new practice owners more strongly for them to truly understand that the patients are there for you. I feel like they might, if there's somebody that they felt connected to, they might ask, but then they move on from it. Or, in your case, Don, patients are not stupid. They're like kids. They know when the parents are fighting and when people aren't getting along. And so it was funny how patients would be like, I can't believe you hung on to her as long as you did. Or, they would say things and I was like, oh, really? And I even had one that was like, I knew you didn't really like her. And I was like, what? I never, it's amazing what patients can pick up. But I feel like we as practice owners have to have the trust in yourself and the gumption and the ability to, and the discipline and the, whatever the word is, to see your vision through, to really, to be able to do that. And I feel like, I didn't seek help. I just sort of went with it. And, I feel like I feel like I sort of went at it alone, but it wasn't easy. And I feel like it would have been nice to have somebody to be like, you're doing the right thing. Yes, this is going to help you, because I don't know, you don't really believe that making these couple of changes would do such an amazing change for your practice. You don't realize. And I feel like, gosh, I mean, my practice, my hygienists are now producing what I bought my practice for. I mean, you think about, practice valuations and growth and these things that, I don't know, didn't feel like it was possible for me, but certainly getting the right team in place. I know I'm preaching to the choir with you three, but I feel like you have to have that confidence to make those changes.
100%. So turns out, Martin, like you've got a book coming out at some point in time. I bet it talks a little bit about some of the things we're talking about. So can you share more?
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. It's called One Move Makes All the Difference: How to Discover Your Power and Transform Your Life. And the core of the book has two primary areas. One is the team acronym, and the other is a really deep dive into the science of optimism. And that we talk about Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar's SPIRE principle, or whole being, what actually comprises happiness and how to live a life of whole being. Because newsflash, particularly for us dental folk, we tend to look toward goalposts as making us happy. Getting through dental school, getting the practice, getting the house, the car, the kids, when the truth is the research actually shows happiness leads to success, not the other way around. And so the book is chock full of not only what I believe are funny anecdotes, it's not just my story. I've had the blessing of having such amazing people in my life, from my friend Sean, who climbed Mount Everest with one functioning lung, to my friend Kimberly Locke, who was a third runner-up on American Idol, and the list goes on and on. And these are all people that talk about the mindset that either got in their way or propelled them forward, that we can all learn from, to bring ourselves out of a place of feeling stuck, whatever that means for you, to get to a different place. I mean, for those who don't know me personally, I was a clinical dentist for almost 10 years and I lost everything. I became disabled. I sat at home for 17 months before Google existed, and I had to redo my entire life. And what I've come to understand now was that it was always my thoughts that came first. And it was my thoughts that ultimately led to the place that I'm just so thrilled to be in today. And the opportunity to help others is a huge honor. And so yeah, December 2nd it comes out, and obviously, like any author, you can go to my website for pre-order. But yeah, super excited.
Congratulations. That's incredible. And it's amazing because everybody has their story, and
Yep.
everybody has something, that forced them to make a change and make a move and do these things. And I always tell dentists, like, don't wait till it's that bad. Like, you don't have to. You can actually by design, create the practice that's going to just make your heart sing and make you, look forward to waking up in the morning and, attract patients that you look forward to seeing. Like, you don't have to hit rock bottom. It doesn't have to be that way. But unfortunately, for many of us, we have to put ourselves through that. So, yeah, I think that, to know that there's people out there that can help us, I think we should, reach out. And I think that, gosh, Don, how long ago do you wish you did this?
Years. I really wish that I had known Martin sooner, and I really wish that I had embraced change a little bit faster. But like most dentists, we tend to, like it a certain way, and we function in that, world for so long that we forget change is not a bad thing. It's actually just something that's natural and happens, and you have to kind of adapt to it.
Yeah, I love that. I think to your point, like we're all on a trajectory and it's easy for us as dentists to get stuck in this belief like, oh, it's a straight line to get where I'm going, so I can start anytime I want. But the reality is it gets harder the longer we wait, doesn't it?
Yes, it
And it's
does.
always overcomable. But my goodness, if we get started, to your point, Pam, before we're so sick and tired of being sick and tired, like the journey there is pretty fast.
Yeah.
I agree. Now, Martin, I have a question. What about the associate dentist? We're
Hmm.
talking from the perspective of the practice owner and, putting the team in place. Not all associates are happy, but some are happy being associates. What
Yeah.
sort of advice would you have for them?
Oh, that's a great question. And one I don't get asked that often. And I'm thrilled that you asked me that because what I'm going to say might sound trite, but the same rules apply. And what I mean by that is, well, actually, let me rephrase. The same rules apply, and they can be even more insidious. Because if you go back to the core of my life, my current life's work, the idea that every incident is neutral, and so there's a space between stimulus and response. If you're going in there as an associate and you're feeling a little squirrely about what's going on, how things are managed, etc., the fact that X thing happened is just a simple fact. It's your thought that's driving emotion, that's creating action, that's manifesting results. And so the team framework can be used in reverse, as I jokingly say, meet. And so, what do you really want to get out of this given situation right now? What action would support that manifestation? What thought do you need to have to create that action? And what emotion will give you the hope to move yourself forward? And so, with associates, I think it's incredibly important to constantly check our thoughts and ask ourselves, quote, how true is that? Is my interpretation of this given scenario really what's happening? Or is it an interpretation that I'm giving that's what's happening? And no one teaches us this stuff in dental school, and no one teaches us the communication skills. And to from a skill perspective, another book that I absolutely love is called Crucial Conversations. I teach their methodologies all the time. I talk about the book all the time. Don's read the book, and it gives you the skills to have a conversation with an owner, with another associate, a hygienist, a team member, a patient that comes from a factually based perspective to allow you to start with facts and remove the emotion out of it to get to a positive end. So I think for associates, it's mind your thoughts,
Mhm.
understand that our interpretations aren't always necessarily real, and then get real with ourselves about, okay, what do I really want out of this situation? And if this is what I want, and I'm yet over here, what's going to bridge the gap to get me closer to what I want, is I think what I would say.
I love it. Pam, seriously, time,
I
space.
know.
I need like to be involved in some world of astrophysics because 30 minutes cranks by.
It cranks by so fast. It's insane.
Yeah.
And wow, thank you both so much. I mean, honestly, Don, I feel like it takes some vulnerability to share your story. I feel like so many of us want to be out there and being like, I have the best practice. I have the best team. I'm the most profitable. I'm the whatever. But like the truth is, most of us are like kind of like schlepping to work and we're really annoyed most of the time. And, you know, and some of us, unfortunately, succumb to the pressures of owning a practice, and I feel like, I love that you've made that change and that you can see in your face like how pleased and how happy you are. And I feel like it's really special to see that. And I also appreciate you for sharing your vulnerability. And Martin, thank you also, because it's really neat to see that there are people out there that we can reach out to. I mean, gosh, all right, I'll fangirl for just like a second if it's okay. Is like Martin was like the guy on the stage at Spear, like who knew that he would actually be reachable and you could speak with and invite into your practice. I mean, it's really one of those things that it's there, it's doable, and it's incredible. So I'm sure many people are going to pre-order your book and want to get online for that. So thank you both so much. Where can we find you, learn from you, and follow you?
Oh, absolutely. It's pretty simple. It's just my name is my website is my name. So it's martinmendelson.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. So any of those platforms you can easily find me. But probably the easiest place is just martinmendelson.com.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. And I'll, echo your sentiments, Pam. This was amazing to hear from you, Don, and Martin obviously is an integral part of that journey. Very cool stuff. Friends, thanks for being here this week. And, we'll probably come back next week, Pam. I don't know.
As long as we're not canceled, we'll be here.
See y'all next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at Ignite DDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to Dentistry Unmasked podcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.